Hi folks, welcome to my 8-Bit Retro Journal. Today I'm going to do something slightly different. So last week's video, you saw me take this mouse and sort of wired it so that it would fit and work with the QL, right? And you can see that kind of works. But it doesn't work well. So that's 2, 3, 4, and the reason it doesn't work well is because I kind of have to move the mouse and then move it back because of the way the mechanism works, and which got me to thinking about, how would Sinclair Research have created a mouse had they developed one while they were still going. And I think that mouse is actually what I want to build today. And it got me to thinking of how it actually would have been designed. And I think it would have been one of those mice where people nowadays would look at it and go, what on earth were they thinking? And so I'm going to, so you can see I have a set of tools here. I've got a glue gun, I've got some cardboard, I've got a piece of metal, I got toothpicks and ice cream sticks and some tape. And also this is the proper plug. And the idea today is that I'm going to prototype a mouse for my QL. It's actually going to be a mouse for an Atari Joystick port that basically, when moved forward, backwards, left, and right, will just give you, just like this mouse, a forward, backwards, left, and right, up, down, left, and right, like a joystick. With the one caveat is that when I stop moving the mouse, that it will let go of that. In other words, if I move this mouse forward, it just stays that way. And what I want my mouse to do is when I stop moving it, it stops moving the cursor. So, in the way I'm thinking of doing this is I have this. I've got this piece of. Let's make sure that it's in focus. I've got this piece of copper, and it's somewhat flexible, and then I have these this toothpick or this ice cream stick, and I'm thinking that, what if some light pressure can actually create a connection. And so I feel pretty confident that the kind of mouse that the Sinclair Research would have created would have been an interesting mouse. So this was the first computer I ever had, and then besides my TRS-80 Pocket computer, this was really the second, my first real computer. I also recently got a Spectrum, and I haven't played with it much yet, but we'll do some work with it eventually. It still has a sticker from, it was an estate sale, I got this on eBay. So I haven't opened this up yet, and I will do a future video on that. But it got me to thinking of how the Sinclair Research would have designed a mouse. And so if you think back, let's say the QL came out 2 weeks before the Macintosh did, and the Macintosh back in 1984 was the one that introduced this idea of a graphical user interface in mice. But imagine if the Macintosh had come out in, let's say, the summer of '83 and revolutionized computing. And here you had Sinclair Research had already been developing the QL. They certainly had, for this machine, they actually had expansion ports where you could use a Kempston or Atari Joystick style connector. And the QL, by the way, doesn't actually have an Atari style connector. The American version does. Most computers, most QLs actually have it's like a squished and wider version of kind of these things. They're like RJ45s or 11s. They have 6 connectors, but they're a little fatter and a little narrower. But in that, it also tells you that they have 6 connectors, so they're actually only a subset of the Atari connector. If you saw my last video, the Atari had all 9 connectors, and it had one reserve, and even had one for 5 volts. Whereas the QL only had 6 connectors: ground, fire. So ground, fire left, right, up, and down. So there's actually no power that's being sent to the device, to the mouse. So all I can do is just close those switches. And so if I wanted to build a mouse that actually did this electronically or electrically, I would have to supply my own power. Whereas if I build it mechanically, like the idea that I have, then I don't. And so I imagine that the QL was already in production, and that they probably would have said, "Oh, we can create our own mouse," and they would have created this weird beast that would not have been up to par with most mice. So most mice have a ball inside, and even this Radio Shack mouse, which I don't know when it came out, but I can imagine the way QL would have done it would have been sort of not quite right. And but it's kind of interesting that I think it would have worked. And so here's what I'm planning on doing today. I'm going to do this with a glue gun, cardboard, this stick. So. And I'm going to build the prototype first, and then if I succeed, then I'll try to build it in plastic using a 3D printer and creating some STL files. So, here's, make sure that I have, so let's give ourselves a little bit more room. So here's what I expect this would have looked like. So imagine the base plate. Right. So that would have been your mouse. It's a little bit more enlarged than it should be, but that's okay. I'll shrink it eventually just to see detail. And then there would have been a slot in here, and then maybe a slot in here. And what these slots would have revealed is that would have been a wheel here. So you would have had a wheel where the bottom of the wheel would have actually hit the surface, and then the same would have gone here. You would have had a wheel here, okay? And then there would have been an axis through here and an axis through here, and it would have been somehow mounted on support struts. And then underneath, it would have had sort of a lever coming out all the way out here. And the same would have happened here, all the way out here. And then basically you would have had these very light connection switches with a wire coming out and with a wire coming out, and you would have had that repeated here with a wire coming out, and then here as well with a wire coming out. And so those would have been, besides, and then you also need a fire button, right? So that could just be a normal switch with a wire coming out. And then you would have had ground, and those would have been your 6 connections. And so what would have happened is, as you move the mouse forward, the wheel would have been pushed down and closed the circuit. And thus, and hopefully this is all visible. Make sure that it would have closed that circuit with ground. So all these are connected to ground as well, right? So they're all connected to ground. And so it would have closed that circuit to be an up or a left or a right or a down. What would have been important here is that what's important is as you move the mouse forward, that it's the forward momentum that does the friction to basically, as it's moving forward, it's pushing the thing and closing the lever. And then as soon as you stop moving forward momentum, it has a chance to sort of the wheel slide. So there's a little bit of a pushback that this switch gives, a very light one, so it lifts it back up. So as you move the mouse forward, it pushes it down when you stop moving it forward. So it's not just that the wheel has a firm grip on the surface and it stays put, but it's the forward momentum that's constantly kind of sort of pushing the switch down, and once you let go, it pushes it up. That's the tricky part of it. And one way to sort of ensure that is that these wheels here, if I do a side view of the wheels, they would have mounts on both sides. And these mounts, which I'm going to use this stick for, one would have had a hole inside and the other one would have had a slot. So that the axle, which I'm going to represent with my toothpick, would have had a chance to kind of wiggle a little bit so that it would lay on the surface but not be pushed to the surface to where it couldn't move. And that's important. What I realized, if you saw my last video, this mouse, the reason I couldn't do this with this mouse, oops, is, let's see if it's in, is because if I open this up, and I remove this and I make sure that I don't lose my spring. So if you can see, there is, maybe I can zoom in on this again like I did last time. Oops. If you can see on this mouse, it's kind of hard to do this, but let's see if I can get it going. That there is a wheel, and that spring-loaded wheel, and what it does is it pushes this ball to these wheels, and so these wheels actually do not spin freely unless you move the ball. And that's why, even though I added a little spring here, it never sprung back because it couldn't, right? And so that's why I think this this idea of using get back out of focus here. That's why I think this idea of using levers on a wheel instead of a ball, where I'm basically pushing it forward, has the opportunity to slide back, given the strength of this switch that I'm going to build. And this is basically, I'm going to cut some strips and leave a gap. And so this is going to require light pressure, but it's also going to flex back. And it won't need a lot of flexing back, I hope. And the idea is, if I can build it out of cardboard using this and a glue gun. The tape is, I think what I'm going to do with the tape is, I'm going to, when I cut the wheel out of cardboard, I'm going to use this as tread around it so I get a little bit of slippery. So the hope is, as I'm moving it forward, it'll end up sliding back when it's done. That's the idea, and I think that is. And then if you do it in plastic, of course, the nice thing about plastic is it doesn't, especially kind of plastic a 3D printer uses, is that it sort of slides. It doesn't grip, and the hope is that the friction moving forward will move it down, and then it'll be able to slip back. So we'll see. I could see this working in cardboard, but then also not working in plastic. But that's the idea, and that's what I want to build. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to build the basic board, mounting two wheels that I cut in cardboard, putting this tread around it, building these switches and wiring it up. I'm not going to worry about this switch. Like I said, I do have I have this old board from a washing machine, and it has switches on here. But I don't want to use these for the forward, backwards, left, and right, because it requires a lot of pressure. Whereas for clicking a mouse button, that for the actual mouse button, I think that'll be fine. So I'll use one of those as that. So that's going to be a no-brainer for that. But for the action here is, can I have the wheel move forward and backwards appropriately to apply pressure, and then when I stop moving the mouse without having to move my hand up, it'll just kind of disconnect by ever so slightly having this pressure move. So again, I need to have enough pressure to close the connection, and then enough when it stops. And then that's the forward momentum, and when the forward momentum stops, I need it to push up. So there's a little bit of physics involved here that's tricky, but I think, with the right material, and I think plastic will be the right material on surfaces like, probably not on a I mean, this might not be the right surface, which is a a mouse pad. But on hard surfaces like this, which is kind of slippery, or a wooden table, this might work. Okay, so that's what I'm going to try. So yeah, let's give it a try. Okay, I'm back, and here's what I have created. Let me go through this a little bit more in detail. So as you can see, the mouse is as I had designed it. I've got 2 wheels. And again, the reason I used wheels instead of a ball is because I want them to be able to move independently. And you can see that as the wheels turn, and again, if you look at the bottom of them, so this is what pokes through, and the wheels, hit the surface. So, hold on. So you have 4 switches. Let me use. You have 4 switches. This one, that one, that one, and that one. And there, I made those myself as well, just out of that. And you can see that. If you can see maybe this one right here. It's barely touched. So it's set up so that. Maybe if you do it from the front, that there's hardly a gap there, so it doesn't take much. I have the mouse button is right there, and again, when you move, it's going to press forward, backwards, right, left on the as you move it. And again, I'm going to demonstrate to you how this works. I have it hooked up to a DB9, which is and configured for the Atari Joystick, again, which the American QL version uses that. And again, if you sort of take a look at its movements, I'm going to go back down here. You can kind of see that the movement is as the levers. Let's see if I can't. Focusing on that a little bit more, and as you can see, when you move it, the levers are hitting the switches for up and down, left and right, and that will give me the mouse motion. So it's a little, I couldn't quite get what I wanted to get, which is, let me go back to normal. I couldn't quite get what I wanted to get with this. If you look, you can kind of see that you can see I kind of had to fill. I had a much bigger gap here, and what was happening is, this is for both sides. I did the same thing up here. You can see I filled this gap, and what was happening is the wheels were just not making enough contact, and so I really wanted the switches to bounce back, but they actually are, even with that little movement. So let me show you first before I plug this into the QL. Let me show you currently. Again, I demonstrated this mouse to you last time, and as I said, so once you move it, it just kind of keeps moving. So it's kind of hard to, right? Because you really need to move it and then move it back. So again, I have to move it and move it back. Oh, move it and move it back. Move it and move it back. If I do a circle with it, you can see the mouse pointer kind of does a circle. Right, make sure you can still see everything. Oops, I should keep this up here. So one more time. If I do a circle with the mouse. You can kind of see it sort of does it, but it's really hard to, because you're constantly chasing the, and so this doesn't, so I think this will work a little better than that. And again, this is in cardboard, which is very light, and again, so let's see. So what I'm going to do, so let me just go to a directory listing. So that's going to list MDV 4, 5, 4, 4, I think. And then we're going to do the same thing with the new mouse. And you can see I constantly have to move the mouse and back and back. Here it goes, right? So, and then if I were to select ZX, so you kind of miss it, boom, it selects it. Okay, so what I'm going to do next is I'm going to plug this mouse, plug that cable into the QL and demonstrate to you how my prototype works. All right, here we go. Okay, so here I've got the QL booted up. So the nice thing is I don't have to worry now about the mouse being in configuration, because it does easily reset itself, especially when you lift it up. So now this is not going to be where I can't boot it up. So it boots up. And so let's give this mouse a try. So one thing I have to do is let's focus on the mouse. Well, let's focus in the middle because I want you to be able to see the screen. I'm going to have to try to hold it. So I didn't leave myself really a good place to hold it. So I'm going to try to hold it right by these two connection points. And let's see how this goes. So I'm going to go move down, up, left. Let me move this out further. So, sorry, make sure you can see me still. Yeah. So let me move this a bit out of the way. I need to leave myself some room. Okay, so once again, I'm going to move left, right, up, down. So that's good. So now let me, oops, so I need to, running out of space. So again, I'm going to go move it. So one thing I've discovered is that because I don't have enough weight on there, sometimes I can't get the balls to roll. I do find, so MDV 2, 3, 4, that it does stop much quicker. So I get that kind of dexterity that I haven't gotten before. And then double click. So it shows promise. It's not perfect. And again, because this is cardboard and I didn't give myself a case where I could actually hold it, I'm running into the problem of where do I hold it? If I hold it in the back, so if I hold it in the back, then there's not enough weight on the top. And also this particular cable is very stiff, which also causes some problems. But I think overall it kind of works. So let me again hold it here. So again, I'm holding it at these points because they're glued on. So I'm going to hold it here, and I'm going to let me try to move this out of the way. So I want to just move up. All right, oops, and then move. There we go. See now I can do little movements which I couldn't do before with the other mouse, which is kind of nice. So I can go. Can I go diagonal? I can, and then back diagonal. Yep. Well, so again, sometimes if I go diagonal. And then again, if I click it, yeah. So as a prototype, I think I'm not unhappy with it. It shows promise. Of course, the next phase of this, I'm going to zoom in on this now. The next phase of this is going to be, can I now prototype this in on my unzoom it again. Can I prototype this now and then use my 3D printer to actually create a 3D model, so in STL files? Certainly the hardware for this does not require much, so it's going to be a pretty easy project for folks to do themselves. The switches, I really just created them myself using using aluminum, and I still have part of the plate here. So if I unzoom, right, so I still have part of this plate here. It's pretty thin, and if you cut strips and keep them close in contact, it'll work. But let's zoom back in on this awesome mouse. So that is my retro joystick, Atari Joystick mouse, you know, a la Sinclair Research design. In other words, the way I would have thought Sinclair Research would have designed a mouse, say had Macintosh been launched maybe the summer of '83, Sinclair would have maybe thought, oh, we should have a mouse as part of that, or later on. And since their joystick ports don't give power, it would have been a purely mechanical mouse. This mouse will work with a Commodore 64, should work with Atari systems, even with on the joystick port with the Spectrum Next. So again, I'm going to continue on with this to see if I can't create a better plastic version. And I think, again, this cable right here, see if I can't, this cable right here is too stiff as well, so I need to get a better cable. But again, this plastic, this cardboard, it didn't really have a good place to hold it, and so that's why it became, so on this and this side, I really should have created some sort of case for it, but I want my viewers to see how it's actually working. But it does work, and so a good start. I'll look to do more with this in the future, so check out my channel. But yeah, mechanical retro mouse that works on an Atari joystick. So again, thanks for joining me today. Again, still the month of QL November, so go check out some of the other videos that are out there, and I'll be back next week for one more video. So thanks for joining me, and stay safe.